In 1957, the I Love Lucy show was in its sixth and final season when it aired an episode guest starring George Reeves, who had been starring in the very first televised appearance of Superman in the sitcom Adventures of Superman. In the episode, Lucy's son and husband were watching an episode of Adventures of Superman when it was announced that he would be in town. Since her son's birthday was coming up, Lucy promises her son Ricky that Superman will make an appearance at his birthday party. Her husband had already met him, and she was confident they'd be able to convince him to come to their son's birthday party. They were wrong. Unfortunately, Superman would be busy at the time of the birthday party, and so had to cancel his appearance. Not wanting to disappoint her son, Lucy decides to dress up as a superhero and make an appearance at her son's party. Unfortunately, in Lucy fashion, she gets stranded outside on a ledge. At the last minute, the actual Superman shows up, attends the son's birthday party, and saves Lucy from the ledge by the end of the night. George Reeves was never credited for his appearance in the episode because Lucy wanted young kids to actually believe that he was Superman. This episode is largely believed to be the first ever sitcom crossover, where a character from an entirely different show made an appearance in another. The concept was extremely popular, and there have been countless popular crossover episodes and specials since then. Crossovers represent a huge marketing and promotional opportunity by having two or more shows with similar themes promote and market each other to new audiences. Sometimes crossovers happen between two shows created by the same production company or owned by the same studio. Oftentimes, crossovers occur because shows with similar themes are created by the same person, and over the years, crossovers have often seen a spike in viewership for both shows, because fans are eager to see their favorite characters interact with each other, and that at any moment you can see a character you love from a different show make a guest appearance in another. For the most part, I feel like crossovers aren't really that great, mostly because I think there's often a missed opportunity to really maximize on the chance of having these characters that we really like and have come to know really well interact with each other. And when it comes to Disney and Nickelodeon, I think oftentimes their crossovers represent the issues I have with the whole concept. I think that a successful crossover should do a couple things. One, it should create an opportunity for characters that we're already very fond of to interact with each other in an organic and believable way. Two, it should give all the characters, even supporting characters, something meaningful to do throughout the entire story. I know sometimes depending on the series that means juggling over 10 characters, but I still think every character should play a part in the story. 3. The characters need to still feel like themselves. What happens is that sometimes with crossovers, different writers are writing for characters they've never written for before, but that creates a problem where characters don't feel like themselves and feels very contradictory to how they would normally act in their shows. And I think pretty much all the major Nickelodeon and Disney Channel crossovers fail in that arena. So let's take a look at some of the major crossovers from our childhood and see how they stack up against those criterias. That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. So this was a huge crossover event in the early 2000s. It coincided with the premiere of Hannah Montana, which was in its first season when the crossover happened, as well as the final season of That's So Raven. So in a way, it represented the dawn of a new era at Disney Channel while saying goodbye to the old. Unlike other crossovers where it's a single major episode event, this crossover spans 3 episodes and 3 different sitcoms, which I think is what makes it the weakest crossover in the bunch. The thing about this crossover in particular is that it never really felt that all of these shows were crossing over with each other. It was pretty much 2 crossovers at a time. All the episodes did air the same night to make it feel more sequential, but it was still 3 very self-contained stories that had a guest appearance from a character in another show. In fact, if you watch those episodes removed from the context of the crossovers, you don't really feel like you're missing much. And the only episode where all 3 shows are crossing over, that is, a character from each show appears in a single episode, is the Sweet Life episode. Hannah never appears in the That's So Raven episode, and Raven never makes an appearance in the Hannah Montana episode. So yeah, as iconic as this crossover was, it was pretty disappointing, and I think relied too heavily on the initial sensation of just having these characters appear together. But let's actually dive into each episode and see how well it comes together.
For the first time ever, for one night only, your favorite Disney Channel stars are guest starring in each other's shows, back to back to back. It's the can't miss event, That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana.
Raven Baxter, that's me.
I'm Cody and this is Zach. I'm Maddie. Hey Maddie.
Oh, Hannah Montana! I'm Raven. Actually, he's Juan and I'm Camille.
Friday, July 28th, Raven meets Zach and Cody, who meet Hannah, who knows London, who gets tricked by Maddie into wearing Raven's dress. After Raven gets Zach and Cody to fool her boss, before she has a vision about their party which she crashes that includes a cake that Hannah likes.
Vanilla, my favorite.
It's Disney Channel's first mixed up, mashed up night. That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. Premieres Friday, July 28th at 8, 7 Central. Part of Disney Channel's So Hot Summer.
So the first episode in the crossover was the That's So Raven episode Checkin Out. Raven is working for a fashion magazine and is tasked with organizing a promising campaign for the magazine for a new line of boys fashion. So they're partnering up with a famous designer and doing a shoot in Boston, which means staying at the Tipton Hotel. Raven messes up the reservation, which means that the boy models and the fashion designer will not be able to make it to Boston. But after having a fortuitous vision, Raven is able to meet and help Zack and Cody.
His arms out. Why? Just do it.
Of course I'll do it.
You saved me.
The twins are so grateful that they promise to help Raven with whatever she needs. When Raven realizes that she might lose her job due to her mess up, she dresses up as a famous fashion designer, as Raven does, and even enlists the help of the twins to pose as the models.
Okay, now we wet. We wet. You pose, we wet. I dance, you pose, we wet. We do it, we rock.
Eventually, everything works out, the fashion designer returns, she loves Zack and Cody, and Raven gets to keep her job. Now, as a That's So Raven episode, I think it was pretty good. It was funny. Raven's physical comedy is on a whole other level.
I need someone who's prepared to jump through hoops for me.
I think this episode just really reaffirmed for me why Raven was such a Wonder Generation talent. But as a crossover episode, I felt like it was really weak. For one, Raven only interacts with the twins and Mosby. She never meets any of the other main characters, and all of the other That's So Raven characters are left in San Francisco with a really boring B-plot. In the B-plot, Chelsea's trying to break a world record for paddleball. I just thought it was such a blunder to not have the other characters from That's So Raven interact with the Sweet Life cast. And because of that, this episode felt less like a crossover episode and more so an episode of That's So Raven guest starring Zack and Cody. I liked the fact that Raven's vision was what drew her to even meet the twins, and I do think that even though this was a That's So Raven episode, the Sweet Life characters were written very consistently with how they appeared in their show. So I'm going to give this episode a C-. Now this is where the crossover really hits its stride, so much so that the title of this episode, That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana, was used as a title for the entire crossover event. In this episode, Raven is still in Boston after her flight was cancelled, and she had the opportunity to meet Maddie in this episode, which she didn't in the previous episode because Maddie just never showed up.
This has been the worst day of my life. I missed my flight, and now this one's canceled, so I'm stuck here all weekend.
I actually don't like their meeting here. It felt really awkward, like Raven just walked over the candy counter and just started venting about missing her plane to Maddie out of nowhere. But I at least like that Raven got an opportunity to interact with more characters. Through Maddie, Raven gets introduced to London, and Maddie promises her that she can get London to appear in one of her original designs.
What if London wore one of your designs?
Oh my goodness, you could do that.
She would if I asked her. She thinks very highly of my opinion.
But London, being London, refuses to wear anything that wasn't created by a famous designer. So to keep her promise to Raven, Maddie tricks London into wearing one of Raven's designs. Meanwhile, Raven has a vision about Cody getting hurt on their mom's birthday, and for the rest of the day, Cody is paranoid that something bad is going to happen to him.
Well, it's just freaky how Raven seems to know about things before they happen. What are you worrying about?
In the end, Zack switches clothes with Cody and ends up being the one to get hurt at their mom's birthday party. Now, in a situation like this, with Zack being injured, he may be entitled to financial compensation. Personal injuries could be worth millions of dollars, and if Zack were to sue the Tipton Hotel, he could stand to win a large sum of money. But that really all comes down to what kind of legal firm he hires to take on his case. Now, with traditional firms, Zack may run into many problems like tedious paperwork, high costs, lengthy processing times. That is, of course, unless he hired one of America's leading personal injury firms, Morgan & Morgan. Thank you. Personally, I feel like that was Drew Gooden levels of fantastic. Morgan & Morgan is a personal injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys operating in all 50 states. If you are ever seriously hurt, your injury may be worth millions of dollars. With Morgan & Morgan, clients have won up to $12 million in Florida and up to $26 million in Philadelphia. Like, with that money, you could actually afford to stay at a hotel like the Tipton. Insurance companies often lowball their clients, but Morgan, and Morgan always tries to get the very best payout for their clients. And the best part about it is the service is completely free unless you win your case. To use their service, you can click the link in my bio or scan the QR code, fill out this application and submit it, and that's it. Someone from the firm will reach out to you regarding your case. So if you ever get seriously injured, your case could be worth millions and you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. You can start your claim with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/Tron or by scanning the QR code on the screen. Meanwhile, London unknowingly wears one of Raven's designs, but when Raven claims it as hers, London immediately hates it and the truth about Maddie's plot to trick London is revealed. Then out of nowhere, Hannah Montana shows up and everyone loses their mind.
Hannah Montana! I almost passed out.
Hannah says she loves London's dress, which makes London also like it, so London forgives Maddie and Raven forgives her too. Although Hannah and London did end up accidentally ripping Raven's dress.
Hey, you ripped it!
No, you ripped it.
Oh no, she didn't.
And that was it. That was the crossover episode. So this episode definitely felt more like a crossover than the previous episode. It's the only episode where one character from each of the three shows make an appearance. The characters are written pretty consistently, but I felt like Maddie and Raven didn't meet in a very organic way. And not to mention Hannah being absent for the majority of the episode. I feel more comfortable calling her appearance a cameo rather than a guest appearance. She only showed up at the very last minute, so that was pretty disappointing. But I really do like the fact that this episode at least attempted to have a character from all the shows in one episode. Again, we're still missing the supporting cast. No other character from That's So Raven or Hannah Montana shows up, and so there were no big ensemble opportunities. But this episode was definitely more in line with the crossover concept than the other one, so B-. So this episode picks up with Hannah checking out of the Tipton, and we find out that she's become friends with Maddie, who is also apparently a huge fan of Robbie Ray. This episode, in my opinion, is the weakest out of the three. It's an embarrassment to even call it a crossover episode. Maddie is the only character from the other shows to show up in this episode, and she only makes a brief appearance at the beginning and at the end. The episode has nothing to do with the other shows. It's following Robbie Ray trying to restart his music career. It's like they didn't even try with this episode. I imagine that the Hannah Montana creators must have gotten a mandate saying that they have to have one episode in the season that ties to Sweet Life in some way, and they just decided to throw Maddie in there and make her a fan of Robbie Ray. Nothing came together for this one. It was also the most boring episode out of the three, so it really just failed on all accounts. F-. So that was the huge event of the early 2000s. That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. Again, I felt like the series really relied too heavily on just the excitement of seeing these characters potentially interact with each other without really finding interesting and compelling ways to pull them together. The That's So Raven episode didn't cross over with Hannah Montana at all, and I feel like it really underutilized the Sweet Life cast and pushed the supporting That's So Raven cast to the back. The Sweet Life episode was definitely the strongest, only because one character from each show made an appearance, but I still felt like the way they pulled the characters together wasn't really compelling, and I really didn't like that Hannah only showed up in the last couple minutes of the episode. The Hannah Montana episode was just the absolute worst. It's probably the worst crossover episode I've ever seen. It's an embarrassment to even call it a crossover episode. So overall, I felt like this first major crossover event was kind of just really disappointing. It wasn't really too memorable, there wasn't anything really all exciting going on, and I just felt like overall they could have done a much better job. But let's look into the next major crossover event they attempted to do.
Come aboard the SS Tipton for Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana.
Let's go.
Win 9 stars
Wow.
from 3 shows.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
Are all on board the SS Tipton.
It's Hannah Montana!
You get the Disney Channel special event, Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana.
Did you hear that?
It's one cruise you will never forget.
See if you can handle it.
Watch Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana tonight at 7:30, 6:30 Central on Disney Channel.
The next major Disney crossover was Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana, the spiritual successor to the first crossover. This time, it's a crossover between Wizards of Waverly Place, Hannah Montana, and Sweet Life on Deck. I did think that this crossover was a marked improvement on the original crossover, but for some reason they followed the exact same format of the original crossover, which I get to some degree because the original was really popular in terms of viewership, but like I said, I thought that the original crossover relied heavily on the sensation of potentially seeing these characters together without really trying to create compelling circumstances for these characters to be together. I do think that this crossover was better though, but it still really struggled with a lot of the same problems the original did. It was broken up into 3 episodes, one episode being from one distinct show, and oftentimes that created problems where not all the episodes would be crossing over. But let's look into it. So in this episode, Justin wins an essay contest competition for tickets to the SS Tipton Teen Cruise. However, Alex is not allowed to join the cruise because she fell behind in her science class.
See? Too many distractions. It's really Justin's fault that I've fallen behind in science.
Really? I thought it had something to do with the 14 missing assignments.
However, when they make it onto the ship, Alex realizes that there's a class on board and decides to take classes on the ship instead, so Alex is allowed to be on the cruise. Once on board, Justin makes it his mission to get a date with London Tipton, and when he meets her, to impress her, he pretends to be a doctor. It works and he gets to go on a date with her, but starts to feel guilty when London confides in him that people lie to her all the time to get close to her.
A lot of people who make up all kinds of stories just to get close to me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, people lie to me all the time. But you would never lie to me, would you, Dr. Fossil?
Oh, God. No.
Justin tries to tell her the truth, but she doesn't even believe him and ends up breaking up with him because she thought he was too stupid. Meanwhile, Alex sneaks Harper onto the ship to take her classes for her so she can just enjoy the cruise. She meets Bailey and the two form a pretty fast friendship. Meanwhile, Harper becomes friends with Cody after realizing that they both really like school. Max befriends Zack in the most stupid way possible. They pretty much spend the entire episode trying to outdo each other in ridiculous dares. Anyways, throughout the episode, Alex tries to avoid school and keep her identity a secret, but eventually it all catches up with her and she's forced to send Harper back and actually go to school. And that was it. That was pretty much the entire episode. It wasn't terrible. I like that at least in this one, the supporting cast also got the opportunity to interact with each other and it wasn't just Alex and Justin on a cruise. And you're probably noticing a huge missing aspect of this crossover episode. No Hannah. Again. I truly do not understand this concept of a crossover where the only time all 3 shows crossover is with the Sweet Life episode. I mean, I get that it's a lot of characters to juggle with, but at that point, it feels like false advertising. Like the crossover only ever really happens for the Sweet Life episode. But I still found this episode entertaining. I felt that despite this being a Wizards episode, the Sweet Life characters felt very consistent to how they usually are, and I do like how most of the characters got more to do. So, C+. So this episode serves as a follow-up from the previous episode. The Russo siblings are still on the cruise and international superstar Hannah Montana is also joining the cruise because she has a special concert in Hawaii. Bailey really wants to go to the Hannah concert, and Cody for the entire season has been trying to win Bailey's affection. So to impress her, he promises her that he can get tickets to the concert. Because he had met her in the previous crossover, he was pretty confident that he could get the tickets. But when he tries to talk to her, Hannah doesn't remember him at all.
Cody is here to see you.
I don't know what Cody. Here's a picture.
But I don't want a picture.
Which actually made a lot of sense to me, especially because they barely interacted in the previous special because she was only there for 2 minutes. Anyways, Cody spends the rest of the episode trying to win concert tickets through a scavenger hunt for Bailey. Meanwhile, Max now has a crush on London for some reason and spends the whole episode trying to impress her, but she never gives him the time of day. Also, Alex pulls a prank on Justin and turns him blue, and Justin and Mr. Mosby spend the episode trying to figure out who the culprit is. Mr. Mosby is convinced it's Zack, while Justin is convinced it's Alex. Eventually, they're able to catch them and figure out it is Alex. She gets in trouble, and Zack gets let off the hook. Meanwhile, Cody fails to win the scavenger hunt and concert tickets for Bailey, but Hannah runs into them, and this time, she does recognize Cody and gives him tickets and backstage passes to the concert. Bailey is so overjoyed that she kisses him, and they officially begin dating. Now, this episode was better than the previous only because this is the only episode where all three shows actually cross over, but overall, I still think it was kinda disappointing. One thing that I didn't like was that the wizards never used their powers in this episode. I don't know, I kind of liked that not only did Raven still have visions in the Sweet Life episode, and they even used the same animation for it, but they also used it as a plot device to push the story forward. Here, they never used magic ever again, and this was also the last episode featuring the Russos. They leave the crossover after this, which I really hate. Also, maybe on just a superficial level, I am really disappointed Hannah never interacted with anyone from Wizards. This is why I say these specials don't feel like crossovers. I would love to see Alex and Hannah meet. Maybe Hannah even mentions how Alex looks like Michaela, or maybe she straight up thinks she's Michaela and tries to avoid her. I just hate that for a crossover special there doesn't seem to be a lot of crossover, but it was better than the last one, and I do think it was at the very least entertaining. So B-. So the follow-up Hannah Montana episode is also really disappointing. Not as bad as the last Hannah Montana episode. This time she actually does stay at the Tipton, but I still think the way that the episode was put together didn't really put to use the fact that they have access to all of these other characters. So anyways, in the episode, Hannah loses her special anklet that her mom gave her that she wears as a lucky charm every time she performs, which we've never heard of before or after this episode. So how special could that anklet really be? Anyway, she spends the episode going on a wild goose chase trying to find the anklet, and eventually she finds out London has it, but London refuses to give it back. So when Hannah tells her the diamonds are fake, London throws it into the ocean.
It's my most special possession. The diamonds are fake. Ew! No! What are you so upset about? I'm the one who had to touch it.
Miley becomes depressed because she's convinced she can't perform without it, and a bunch of bad stuff has been happening to her ever since she lost it. But then she runs into Cody and Bailey, and they give her a pep talk and make her feel better, and she decides to continue on with the concert. And that was it. I still did not like this episode. You know what I realized? Hannah Montana is just a very bad show. Like, objectively, it always has the weakest writing. The music is good. It's obviously very popular. It's crazy that it is always the weakest episode in the crossovers. It's just not a very well written show. But I do appreciate this episode more because at least they didn't just have one guest star like last time. This still felt like a crossover episode. So it was at least better than the last one, even if it still really sucked. C-. So yeah, that was the second crossover, and even though I think it was a general improvement over the original, I still think that their insistence on repeating the same formula from the original crossover ultimately really holds it back. I don't understand why only the Sweet Life episode acts as a true crossover. I don't know who at Disney decided that if you want to see these three shows crossover, you have to watch the Sweet Life episode, and the other episodes are basically just filler. I hated that the Russos weren't in the last episode, and I hated that Hannah wasn't in the first episode. So Wizards and That's So Raven only crosses over with Sweet Life, but Wizards and That's So Raven never get to cross over with Hannah. And I don't understand why. It's so crazy to me. And that's what makes the crossover ultimately feel like an incomplete special.
They're two of Nick's biggest stars and two of Nick's biggest shows. And they're coming together.
No way, you're iParty!
In the biggest television event of the year.
It's gonna be good.
iCarly.
That girl Carly's really pretty, don't you think?
Meets Victorious.
Joy, who's she?
In iParty with Victorious. The brand new TV event coming this summer only on Nick.
So I've already talked about how disappointing the iParty with Victoria's crossover special was, but I just really want to highlight here how much of a massive fumble this was. Nickelodeon, more so than Disney Channel, had a built-in formula for success because two of their most popular shows on the network at the time were created and produced by the same people. And so there was always a more intentional effort with Nickelodeon shows to establish a connected universe among their shows. Sometimes that would be more explicit by having characters from different shows show up as guest appearances in other shows, or more subtle like recycling jokes and references. So there was always way more intentionality with creating a connected universe among the Nickelodeon shows, more so than among the Disney Channel shows. And I think that's why I hated the idea of a connected Disney universe, because even when they did crossovers, it never felt like these characters were living in a shared universe. Like when Hannah shows up at the Tipton Hotel, they never mention or reference her until the next crossover. Alex and Justin never talk about meeting London Tipton ever again. Those crossovers are just always self-contained stories. The possibility of these characters interacting with each other begins and ends at those crossovers. But over at Nickelodeon, especially with the Dan Schneider shows, it always seemed like it was very possible for these characters to meet and interact with each other. So I say all of that to say that no two shows were more perfect for a crossover special than iCarly and Victorious, two of the most popular shows on the network, both created by the same person. So it's really disappointing that this special was bad. And worst of all, boring. iParty with Victorious acts as an episode of iCarly, but not an episode of Victorious, which means that most of the plot is centered around the iCarly gang, with the Victorious cast acting as guest stars. In the episode special, Carly is revealed to have been dating a new guy, Steven, for the past couple of months. Apparently, Steven's parents are divorced, so he spent half of his time in Seattle and the other half in LA. Before Steven leaves to go to LA, he gives Carly an engraved charm bracelet and says he's looking forward to their 100th day kiss, which is a special kiss you have with someone on the 100th day you guys are going out. Anyways, Steven leaves for LA and we find out that Steven has also been dating Tori while in LA.
That girl Carly's really pretty, don't you think?
Sure, just not my type.
At school, Steven surprises Tori with a visit, and Robbie takes a picture of Steven and Tori together and has it uploaded to theslap.com. Back in Seattle, Carly tries searching for Steven's name and the picture that Robbie took pops up. Immediately, Sam thinks this means Steven is lying, but Carly still wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. Back in LA, Andre got permission from Kenan Thompson to throw a small house party at his new house. He wants to keep it on the low and only invites his close friends, but Rex tweeted about it and now everyone, including the iCarly gang, knows about the house party. They figure if Tori is going to be there, Steven will be there too, and they decide to drive to Los Angeles to crash the house party to see if Steven is actually cheating. The gang crashes the house party in disguise, and Carly finds Steven giving Tori the same charm bracelet he gave her and telling her he loves her.
Oh my god, it's beautiful. I love you.
I love you too.
And that killed me. Now I'm dead.
Now that they know for a fact that Steven is a cheater, they team up with Tori and Kenan Thompson to expose him. They do an impromptu iCarly web show and expose him as a cheater to their millions of followers. Anyways, Steven leaves in disgrace and we get an epic mashup of the iCarly and Victorious theme song, Leave It All to Shine. So that was pretty bad, right? I hate this crossover special so much because I can't believe this was the best they could come up with to put these two iconic shows together. First of all, I think having a guy be the reason these characters get together is crazy. And not just any guy, a random character introduced just for this special that we never ever see again, and he cheats on both of our main lead characters. Like, really? That's the circumstances under which you want to bring these two shows together? A random guy cheating on both of them? And to make matters worse, this crossover fails in the same way as the Disney crossovers because instead of it being a situation where these two shows are really coming together and the characters are interacting with each other, it instead is basically just an iCarly episode guest starring Tori Vega. None of the other Victorious characters really get anything to do in this special, and I think that was such a huge missed opportunity considering the fact that so many of these characters could play well off each other. Jade and Beck were pushed aside to hang out with Spencer in a hot tub. Kat didn't really get to interact with anybody else and was mute the entire episode. They had Gibby running around looking for a mole. Andre got nothing. Trina got nothing. It's like you have all these characters together for the very first time and you're not going to do anything with them. Like, I know this would be a little more difficult because it's a lot of characters to juggle, but it was really disappointing that the Victorious cast, besides Tori, were kind of just pushed to the side. Even with the iCarly cast, Spencer and Gibby weren't really given a lot to do either. The entire special was essentially just the iCarly trio and Tori trying to catch a cheater, and I just never thought that that was that interesting of a storyline, which for a 1 hour plus special, that's kind of bad. The entire special is basically Carly and Tori finding out that they're both dating the same guy and are both getting cheated on, get revenge on the guy, and then they sing a mashup of their theme songs at the end. Which I will say, I do love the mashup, but it didn't feel worth everything it took just getting them together. So yeah, this was probably one of the most disappointing crossovers ever because they truly did have the recipe for success and still fumbled it. C+. So those were some of the popular crossovers in Disney and Nickelodeon. Obviously there were a lot more. There was the Timmy Jimmy Power Hour event. That was actually so popular they did 2 more versions of that one. The Thundermans had a crossover with Henry Danger. Austin and Ally had a crossover with Jesse. Phineas and Ferb had a crossover with the Avengers. I've seen pretty much all of them, and for the most part, I still have the same critiques. Like, it's fun to see these characters you probably never thought would be in the same room together interact with each other, but generally I think that all of those crossovers rely heavily on just the initial amazement of bringing these characters together rather than actually focusing on a compelling story. Like, if you take out the initial excitement of witnessing this, it makes the story boring and unengaging to watch in most instances. But let me know what your thoughts on the crossover events were, whether or not you agree with any of my points, and if you actually liked any of the crossover events, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.